This short video is about the reading that you did relating to tenors and basses in the original performances of Vivaldi's Gloria. And I'm going to share the article with you just now on the screen, just to pick out some important parts which you can use for your essays. So let me share the screen with you now. What you will find about this article is that it discusses whether men could have been employed to sing at the ospedali or not. And you'll remember from the previous article that the ospedali were intended for women. These were children who had been brought, either orphans or foundlings, who were being looked after by the state of Venice. And you will remember that we discussed how when they performed musical events, that there was a screen in front of them, a grille, so that people couldn't see them properly. They could only hear the music. This was so that men wouldn't come just to see the women, but rather just to hear the music. So the likelihood of men being able to actually participate in the performances is very, very weak. And that comes through in this article. So there were a number of options, of course, that the tenor and bass parts could have been sung by men, but this article rules out that option. Okay. The other option is that the tenor parts, at least, could have been sung by women. And many of you will know of women who have got lower voices who can sing the tenor parts adequately. And so that's a distinct possibility, and one that this article says is highly probable. The difficulty really comes in with the bass parts. And you'll know that it's very, very rare for women to be able to sing as low as a normal male bass. It's not unheard of, but it's certainly very rare, and certainly not widespread enough for them to be enough to be able to sing an all-female performance of a piece like the Vivaldi Gloria. So what were these ospedali doing? How did they manage to get the bass parts to be sung? Well, there are a number of possibilities that this article provides. I want to just highlight a few things. So there are four main arguments about tenors and basses in the music for the ospedali, of which Vivaldi's comprises a part. So the first is that men were available somehow to sing the lower parts. The second is that female singers took both the tenor and the bass parts, singing at notated pitch. That means at the real pitch that they were notated in the bass clef and in the tenor clef. The third says that females did upward transpositions of either the bass part alone or the bass and the tenor part. This means that they actually sang them an octave higher than they were written. And then the fourth one is that the bass parts were just written for possible use.
I'm sorry I'm late.
That's all right. What I've started to do is, nobody else is here. I've just started recording what I would have done with you all so that you can pick it up online. But what I'll do is I'll just start again for you, okay?
Okay.
So we're looking today at this article about tenors and basses at the ospedali. And it's important that we had done what we did last week about reading that ospedali article, because now we know what the ospedali were, that they were specifically for women and for foundlings and for orphans and what have you. Because now we can see how this article itself works. I start by saying that there are four theories about what happened with tenors and basses in the ospedali. And the first is that that sometimes men were available to sing those lower parts of the tenors and basses. The second one is that the women themselves sang the tenor and bass parts, and that they sang them at the actual pitch that they were written. So that's very low, especially for the basses. Okay. The third solution, or the third theory, is that the women sang all the parts of the tenors and the basses, but that they transposed them, or they sang them an octave higher than they were written. Okay. And then
Yes.
one is that the bass parts and sometimes the tenor parts was just written in so that people could see that these parts existed, but that they weren't necessarily independent parts, and that maybe instrumentalists played them alongside, like the cellos or a bassoon or something like that, so that they didn't actually need to be sung. Now, this article considers all of these kind of things, okay, and it gives a little bit more information about the ospedali, which we didn't have from last week. So, for example, the Pieta took in only foundlings, so babies that were abandoned. The Ospadelletto received mostly orphans, and the Mendicanti and the Incurabili had more heterogeneous clientele. That means they had quite a wide variety of different people coming. And this one article says that the Pieta had about 1,000 women living in it at any given time, and that they could have a choir of at least 20 voices and almost as many instrumentalists as well, which would give about 40 altogether. And that they were extraordinarily good players. I think one of the other things which I found interesting, and I highlighted here, is the teaching method that they tended to use in the ospedali, where the main teacher, or the person who was the best instrumentalist, who came in like the formal teacher, like we'd have at university, somebody who teaches violin or teaches voice, only taught the very, very best instrumentalists in the ospedali. Then those people who were students, the top students, then taught the next level down. So those people who were basically okay, they were proficient in the instruments, but were still, they were like intermediate players. They were being taught by the very best students. And then the middle layer, who were being taught by the best students, then in their turn taught the beginners. So it was like a hierarchy. The professional player who was coming in as a teacher taught the very best students. The very best students taught the intermediate students, and the intermediate students taught the beginners. Okay.
Okay.
That had some advantages because it meant that everybody had a role within that structure. Last week, we spoke about the fact that some of the women could get married from these institutions, and others, it says here, took the veil. And I wasn't sure if everybody would know what that meant. Taking the veil means becoming a nun. Okay.
Okay. Isn't a veil something that wives to be wear during a wedding day?
Yes, that's true. In this case, though, when you talk about taking the veil, you'll know that some nuns, they have a headdress on the top that has a veil at the back, which they wear every day.
Oh.
Somebody who is getting married only wears a veil on their wedding day.
Okay.
All right, now I just want to look at some specific parts of the article. One of them, so the first theory is that sometimes men were brought in to sing for special occasions at the ospedali. And what this author points out, and I think it's quite valuable, is that that assumes that mixed choirs of men and women were acceptable in churches at the time. And the point is that they actually weren't. So let's see. I'll read what I've highlighted here. All these theories in favor of mixed choirs betray an undeniable naivety. For the writers use language which suggests that we have already reached the modern epoch of social singing by amateurs, for whom it can indeed be the most natural thing to help out on a casual basis and without remuneration. But in the 18th century, singing in churches was a more serious affair that entailed formal contracts and, of course, payments. And what this author is saying is that at the time, if you sang in church, it wasn't something like what we tend to do now, where the choir is just a group of volunteers, nobody gets paid. In that day and age, it was regular for you to have a contract. So you were a paid member of staff, actually, and you were a staff member, not just a volunteer. Okay, so that's the first part. So the likelihood of people just coming in to help out every now and then is unlikely. The other thing is that the two sexes singing together in church is a much newer phenomenon. So men and women singing together in church. Before, at about this time in history, only men were allowed to participate in the leading of worship through singing or being priests and what have you. And if we remember correctly from last week's article, the women in the choir and the orchestra were separated from the audience by like a grill, so that people could hear the music but not see the women performing it. Now, if they went to those kind of lengths to ensure that men in the audience would not see the women, it would kind of defeat the point if there were men singing in the choir as well. So the author of this article says, that's ridiculous. There's no way that men would have been allowed into such a kind of circumstance if it was already taboo for men in the audience to even see the people who were performing.
Yeah.
For that reason, they say that it's highly unlikely that that men would have been singing in the choir or brought in to sing for special occasions. Then, just want to see where else I've made notes here. I think towards the end. Yeah, they are. All right. So when you read the whole article, you see that all of those four theories that were presented at the beginning are discussed very carefully and in detail. And the little discussion that we've just had now about men relates to the first theory. But the second and the third theory are the most compelling of the lot, or probably the most likely. That is where the women would have sung both the tenor and the bass parts. But one has to work out whether they sang them at the actual pitch that they were notated, which is quite low, or if they sang the tenor and bass parts, but they sang them an octave higher. Okay, and so that's where this article really spends a lot of time, is trying to work out from evidence from different types of music and different composers at the institutions where tenor and bass parts were written, what their practice actually was. Okay, and there's very limited evidence, so it's quite difficult to work out what was actually the case. What is interesting is that in the article, this author says that not all four of the ospedali were using this idea of four-part harmony: soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. Most of them were doing soprano, soprano, alto. Okay, so three-part SSA, or SSAB, where B stands for baritone, not necessarily for bass. Okay. Or SAB, where it did stand for bass, but where the bass part was sung up an octave. So after having discussed all of those things, the author comes to these conclusions. The first one is that vocal parts notated in the tenor clef occur only in works written for the mendicandi and the pieta. Those are two of the ospedali. Okay, so that means that vocal parts that were written quite low for low altos or female tenors only occurred in those two places and not in the other two. The second conclusion is that vocal parts that were notated in the bass clef occur primarily in works from the pieta. So that's the one where Vivaldi worked, and the mendicanti, although some examples from the incurabili have also been identified. So the idea of the bass clef being used, so we were talking about tenor clef in number 1. In number 2 here, the bass clef primarily at the pieta and the mendicanti. Then number 3, at no time were men engaged to sing either the tenor or bass parts. So we are fairly sure then that only women were singing these parts. Number 4, the tenor parts were always sung at notated pitch. So the tenor parts could be sung by very low altos. Okay. The bass parts were sometimes sung at notated pitch, at other times 1 octave higher. And in the article, they discuss this very interesting phenomenon of being able to train a woman's voice to go very low. So there are some women who can get to those extraordinarily low bass notes on their own naturally, but they need special training. And this author suggests that the Pieta, where there were so many as 1,000 women being housed, that they might have had the kind of resources or the availability of people who could sing that low. But he also suggests that occasionally you might have had 1 or 2 people who could do this very low singing for maybe a few years while they were there at the ospedali, and then they would move on and get married and what have you. And then there would be a long period where there wouldn't be anybody who could do that. So he suggests that sometimes they may have been able to use people who could sing at the lower pitch, and that at other times they would have had to sing it an octave higher. So here is number 6. The bass parts were normally conceived in such a way that either form of performance was possible. That means either at the original pitch, at the very low pitch, or an octave higher. The choice depended on the availability and capability of individual bass singers, which varied over time and in each institution. So it was very much to do with if there were the right people to do it. If there weren't, then you sang it up an octave. Then, in the case of Vivaldi, the works for the Pieta from the early period probably reckoned with the performance of the bass at notated pitch, so very low, whereas those supplied in 1739, transposition may have been expected. And that's because there seems to be some evidence that in the earlier part of the century, there were some women who could sing that low, but later on in the century, when Vivaldi was also writing vocal works, even though he wrote a bass part, they were not sung at that pitch, but an octave higher, because there weren't these women basses. And then number 8 says most solutions were pragmatic. Pragmatic means that they made the decision based on the context. So if there were bass singers, female bass singers, they would use them. But if they weren't, then they would transpose it up. Okay. All other things being equal, there was probably a bias towards untransposed. So they were hoping for using the bass female singers. Okay, so that's the main essence of this article. Okay, these 8 what do you call them? Conclusions are the main essence of where we're at. So the main thing is men were not singing the parts, women were singing them. And if they were possible for women to sing, then an all-female performance of the Vivaldi Gloria is certainly possible. like that video that I gave for you to watch a couple of weeks ago, which is an all-female performance, both with the instrumentalists and with the singers. Okay.
Yes.
Now, are there any questions that you want to ask about the about that article? Doesn't sound like there are any.
Well, on my side, I need to go through it again, through that article again. Maybe then I'll have questions.
Okay.
But for now,
for the most part, then you need to look at the things that I've highlighted now. You're looking for what the author says about things like what kind of evidence does he find that there weren't men singing, and what kind of evidence does he produce to say that the vocal parts were either transposed or not transposed. Okay, do you understand what I mean by the transposition? That means that, you know, women can't usually sing as low as a bass. So if they go to sing the bass part, they sing the same notes, but they sing them up an octave. So let's say this was the bass part, la, 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 as it was written down in the original. Then the female might sing la, 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 same notes, but an octave higher. Make sense?
higher. Yes, it does, Doc.
Yes, Doc.
Okay, good. Now let's have a look at how this article relates to what you're being asked to do for your essay. I'm just sharing the essay assignment now. You should be able to see it in a minute. All right. Now you are going to be writing a three-page essay on Vivaldi's Gloria. And one of the sections of that is going to be about tenors and basses in the Gloria. Okay. So what I want you to focus on when you are writing that section is this particular article. So you're going to tell me things like, even though there are tenor and bass parts written for the Gloria, when Vivaldi wrote it for the Pieta, the Ospedali, he wasn't thinking of men singing these parts necessarily, but they were probably performed by female tenors, and when they were available, female basses. Okay, so men were not singing these parts, women were singing them, and they could sing them either at the annotated pitch or an octave higher. Then you can also speak about why men wouldn't have been singing in these choirs, okay? And you can have a look at some of that opening material that I showed you, that I highlighted, to give evidence for that. The men would certainly not have been there if they were trying to keep the women in the Ospedali separate from men in the audience and things like that, okay? So those are the kind of things that I want you to look at in those sections. In this section. Does that make sense?
Yes, Doc, it does.
Yes.
So in this essay, they're going to be, first in the essay, you're going to have an introduction. Like all essays, it will have an introduction. And in your introduction, you're going to say, in this essay, I'm going to talk about different things. I'm going to talk about Vivaldi's church music, and how the Gloria is part of that, or what genre the Gloria is of Vivaldi's music. Then I'm going to look at how the Gloria was part of the revival of Vivaldi's music in the 20th century. So remember, people had forgotten about Vivaldi's music, and then they found all of those manuscripts in the library of the monastery, and they were able to revive the music, okay? Then the third section of the essay is going to look at where or for what context the Gloria was written. They were written for the Ospedali. And then the fourth section will look at the tenor and bass parts of the Gloria. Okay, so that's what your introduction will say. I'm going to look, this essay is about Vivaldi's Gloria, but it's going to look at it from 4 perspectives. Firstly, in which genre the music falls into, the role of Vivaldi's music or of the Gloria in the revival of Vivaldi's music, the context for which the Gloria was written, and then the tenors and basses, or the tenor and bass parts in the Gloria. Then your first section, you're going to look at that first article that we looked at a few weeks ago, okay? And talk about what kind of church music Vivaldi wrote, masses, motets,
Concerto.
you know, those, yes, that kind of thing. And then what is the Gloria? What kind of piece is the Gloria, and how does that fit into things, okay? And what kind of situation was Vivaldi writing for? Was it, remember how I explained that the Ospedali had these concerts and services where people would come and listen to the music and then give big donations for the charity so that they could keep on looking after these girls and women. So it was like an outreach concert. They wanted to, or fundraising concert. They wanted to make money out of these things. And so the Gloria was written as part of that. Then you're going to look at how Vivaldi's music was forgotten about after his death, but that it was revived in the early part of the 20th century when these manuscripts were found. Then you can talk about the 4 Ospedali and the Pieta, which is the one place where Vivaldi worked for a lot of his professional life. And then this last one where you look at the tenors and basses. Okay. Remember, as I said last time, that only 20 marks is the content. There's 10 marks for the correct use of punctuation and spelling and quotations. And then 20 marks for doing the bibliography correctly and citing correctly. So there are a lot of marks for this. It's very important that you get the bibliography correct and that you do the correct citations. Okay?
Yes.
All right. Does that make the Vivaldi essay and what I'm expecting of it clear for you?
Yes, it's very clear.
Okay. Now remember, this is only a 3-page essay. That's not very long. Okay. So you only have to give maybe 2 paragraphs for each of these, 1, 2, 3, and 4. 2 paragraphs for number 1, 2 paragraphs for number 2, 2 paragraphs for number 3, 2 paragraphs for number 4. You don't need to give a lot of detail. You're just going to give me an introduction to each of these 4 things here, okay? So
Yes.
you need to give a lot of information. You just give me the interesting points about each of them.
Okay. Do we have to include the conclusion?
Yes,
Just
there
like
must
any
be a
other
conclusion as well.
Okay.
And when you conclude the essay, you say, in this essay, I have looked at Vivaldi's Gloria from 4 perspectives. What I have shown is that Vivaldi's music was written for the Ospedali and for women performers only, but those women performers tended to be very, very good. And so the music is quite complex. What we've also discovered through the essay is that the music was written for the kind of performances that would attract people to give money for the running of this charity. So they were for fundraisers, but they were not secular concerts. It wasn't like going to the opera or something like this. This was in the context of a church service. So they were church services with beautiful music, and then people would give money afterwards. Okay, so give us the context. Then we've learned that all of the vocal parts would have been sung by women. None of them would have been sung by men. And we've learned that there were 4 ospedali, all catering for the needs of abandoned women or children, female children, and or orphans, female orphans. Okay, and they were all in the city of Venice, and that Vivaldi worked at one of them, the Pieta. So the conclusion just sums up everything for us again. Okay.
Okay.
Yes,
So
Doc.
what, and also what you can say in the, I think what would make your conclusion interesting, particularly as both of you are women, is that a lot of music in Europe and at this time was performed almost exclusively by men, especially the kind of concert music that Vivaldi was writing. So to find that music of this caliber or this kind of standard was written for all female choirs and all female orchestras is very unusual. But it also, you can say, for example, well, this kind of piece of music would be ideal to sing for a celebration like Women's Day, because when we celebrate women, we want to highlight the fact that there have been instances in history where beautiful music was written exclusively for women to sing and perform at a very high level. That would bring everything together very nicely in your conclusion. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now, I want to look, are there any further questions before we move on?
No.
No, sir, I'm covered.
You're
I didn't
covered.
inside. Yeah.
Good. All right. Now, let's just have a look at this week in our on Moodle. I'm just going to share the Moodle page. Let's go to. Oh, there's put up last week's lecture, by the way. I recorded it and I'll put it up there for you. And I'll put up today's one. I'm recording this now, okay? I want you to, I think I asked you to watch this video last week, didn't I?
Yes, it is.
Let me just check. Of course, yes. Okay, I asked, oh, no, I didn't. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing here. Okay, no, I didn't ask you to do that. So this week, I want you to watch this video here, all right? And I want you to record the text of the Vivaldi piece that you are going to conduct. That's the Et Intera Pax. Remember the piece that we started looking at last week? You can download it over here. But you'll see that the text is very short. You may remember that we looked at this. Are you still seeing the website, or has it gone into this Master of Music thing that I'm looking at now?
Yes.
You can see the Master of Music.
Yes, I can see.
Okay. So let me just show you here quickly. Let me just find it. There's a section here on the Et Intera Pax. Gloria, there we go. There, Et Intera Pax, okay? There's the text, that's the whole text for the entire movement that you are going to do. And I'm going to say it slowly for you here, and then I want you to repeat that over and over again to yourself and record it for me and send it back, okay? Because I want to check that you're getting the pronunciation correctly. So this is what it sounds like. Et in terra pax hominibus bone voluntatis. I'll do it again. Et in terra pax hominibus bone voluntatis. When you've got two R's like this, you need to roll them. Terra pax, okay? When you get an A and an E, go for the E sound. Bone voluntatis. Okay. Et in terra pax hominibus bone voluntatis. So I want you to practice that and then to send a recording of that to me as part of your work this week. So two things, you're going to watch this video and then you're going to record the text for me, okay? Then you have a rehearsal plan due. And just to remind you how that works, let's just go through it quickly. It's assessment number 3, okay? The plan must include a 10-minute warm-up, which covers all the aspects of the voice. And we've done this many, many times before. So I want you to go over all of your notes about putting together a good warm-up. Remember that the warm-up must have breathing exercises. It must have exercises for the lowest part of the voice, for the middle part of the voice, and for the highest part of the voice, that you must somehow practice the vowel sounds and also some consonant sounds, that kind of thing. So go and revise that so that you can create a very nice 10-minute warm-up, okay? Don't spend a lot of time on stretching the body and that kind of thing. You can have a body stretch, but at the most, it must be between 30 seconds and 1 minute, okay? So it should be just a very short part of the warm-up. And then I want you to do a detailed section which states exactly which sections you're going to rehearse. And you use the bar numbers from that et in terra pax piece, okay? So you're using the et in terra pax, the same piece that you're going to land up conducting, okay? And you're going to show exactly how you're going to do that. So it says here, be sure to include as much detail about the techniques you will use to teach the vocal parts, okay? So if you say, I'm going to do a call and response thing, then tell me which section of the melody you're going to do. Let me give you an example. I just want to find the et in terra pax, then I'm going to show it to you, okay? Right. Here is here's the sheet music, okay?
Yes.
Let's say you want to teach the tenor part by call and response, okay? And you say, I'm going to teach it like this. Et in terra pax hominibus. Then you say to me, I'm going to practice from bar 10, and I'm going to sing bar 10, 11, 12, and 13. Then I'm going to ask the tenors to sing that back to me. And the first time I sing it, I'm just going to do it without the text like this. Do, 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 do. Then they're going to reply it back to me. If they get it right, then I'm going to add the text. Et in terra pax hominibus. Okay? Then you say, okay, then I'm going to go down to the bass part and I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I'll start at bar 9 and go through to bar 13. I'll start without the text. If they get it right, then I'll add the text, and if they get that right, then I'll put together the tenors and basses between bar 9 to 13. Okay, do you see how much detail I'm giving there? First, I say I'm going to do this section with the tenors, but I'm going to do it without the text. Then I'm going to add the text if they've got that correct. Once they've got that correct, then I'll move to the bass part and I'll go from bar 9 to 13. If they get it right without the text, then I'll add the text. Then you can say, then I'll put them together and see how they manage. Then I'll start teaching the alto part in the same way. Then I'll add the soprano part, okay? Does that make sense?
Yes, Doc, it does.
So you don't have to teach the whole piece in one rehearsal, okay? I don't mind if your rehearsal plan focuses only on 2 or 3 pages of the whole piece, but I want you to give all the little details about how you're going to teach it and how you're going to put it all together, and how, when you've got it all together, how you're going to work on the dynamics, how you're going to make them get louder on particular words, or how are you going to get them to do the phrasing. All of those things I want you to include in how you put together the rehearsal plan, okay? I want to show you how you can, I've given a template for rehearsal plans in the textbook that's available on Moodle, and I just want to show you what it looks like and where it is in the textbook. So if you look on page 25, and I'm going to share it with you now so you can see it. So on page 25 is a rehearsal plan template, and what I can do just now is I'll put this in a separate document so that you can fill it in yourself, okay? See the date of the rehearsal, the venue, the duration. You can do a duration of 2 hours, 1 hour and a half to 2 hours, and you would be the director. Then you tell me, what are your goals here? You can say, the first goal is to learn the tenor and bass parts between bars 18 and 29 or something like that. The second goal is to learn the soprano and alto parts between bars 15 and 29. The third goal is to put those sections together. And the fourth goal is then to learn the next section of 15 bars, including putting in the dynamics. So tell me exactly what your goals are. This is what I want to achieve in this period of 2 hours or whatever, okay? Then you carry on here to, sorry, let me just go a bit up here, the warm-up. Your expected duration is 10 minutes. You just want to have a 10-minute warm-up. And then the relation to rehearsal goals above and repertoire. So you're going to say, because I'm looking at this section of the interrupts where the tenors go to quite a high section, I'm going to concentrate on warming up the higher part of the voices. And because this is in Latin, I'm going to focus on getting the very round vowel sounds to be clear and nice. So I'm going to do a lot of vowel exercises. And then to ensure that we get a good, clear sound from all of the parts together, I'm going to do some exercises in different parts so that we can make sure that the sopranos, the altos, and the tenors and the basses are all equally balanced. Okay, so that tells me what your aim is in the warm-ups. I'm going to be looking at the vowel sounds, I'm going to be looking at the upper part of the voice, and I'm going to be looking at choral balance. Then you choose vocal exercises that will do those kind of things. Okay, there. So warm-up 1, warm-up 2, warm-up 3, and so on. Then the repertoire. So your piece, you're only going to have one piece. It's just going to be the et intera pax. And you say, this is what I'm going to rehearse. This is why I'm going to rehearse it. This is how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to work with the tenors. This is what I'm going to do with the basses. While the tenors and basses are doing this, this is what the sopranos and altos will be doing. So you tell me exactly how you're going to do it. Let's say you're going to split up the rehearsal and you're going to send the altos and the sopranos into another room with another director. Then you tell me, while I'm working with the tenors and basses doing this, the other sopranos and altos will be doing this in another room, and that's how they're going to learn it. Okay, so give me all the details, every last little bit of details. Okay, so you won't need to include piece 2, 3, and 4. You're just going to include one piece, the et intera pax. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, Doc, it does.
Tembeka? Is she still here? Oh no, she's left. Okay. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to save this as a separate little document, and I'll send it to you as an attachment, so that if you want to, you can use it as your own. You can put it in your own words and things like that. Okay.
Okay, Doc.
Do you have any questions about that?
Can we take it as, should we like take the exact format and then change the words?
You can
The format.
format, and you can use the exact words that are there. Just include all of your details about the about your rehearsal in your own words. Okay.
Okay.
And can you please try and submit that to me by Friday this week or by Monday next week? Okay.
Okay.
And then I would.
What's the rehearsal plan?
Sorry, say again.
The video and the voice notes, or the rehearsal plan?
So you can do the voice note on Friday. And if you are finished the rehearsal plan, you can submit it on Friday. Otherwise, you can submit that on Monday.
Okay.
Okay. And let's aim for that essay to be the following Monday. So not this coming Monday, which would be the, let's see, I think it'll be the 25th of October. But the one after that, that would be the 1st of, oh no, that's a public holiday. The 1st of November is voting day. So let's not make it due on that day. Let's make it due the day after. So the 2nd of November.
Okay.
Okay, that gives you 2 weeks to put that together.
That's enough time. Thank you.
Good. Because I think, look, you've got all of the information now. It's just really writing it out. Now that we've gone through each of the articles one by one, you kind of know what you're going to do. It's just putting it into words.
Okay.
Okay, are you happy with that?
Yes, I am, Doc. I am. So next week, Monday, it's the voice notes.
This Friday,
And
voice notes.
Or this
Monday,
Friday, voice notes. Sorry.
Monday, you can hand in the rehearsal plan. And then the following Tuesday, the 2nd of November.
Okay.
Okay. I'll put it on, I'll put all of those details on WhatsApp now. I'll send a WhatsApp message with all of those details. Okay.
Okay, so we'll forget.
Good. So from next week, we will be on week 9, okay, of Moodle. So we're doing week 7 and 8 together this week. Okay. Just remember to watch that little video, because that little video about rehearsal plans will help you with the rehearsal plan project. Okay. So that video that's for 7, watch that, and it will help you with setting up your rehearsal plan.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Doc, I sent you, okay, after you finish recording the class, then I'll ask the question.